Right, it's Jim Everett. In part two of my interview with Greg Hartle, we talked about act, analyze, and adjust in part one. And so now we're going to move into some of the biggest mistakes that you see business owners making, Greg, and just how to then start avoiding those particular mistakes.
Sure. Well, there's certainly a lot of mistakes that all of us business owners make on a regular basis. And I think that number one, I would just say that mistakes are okay. Mistakes are common and they're okay. And that's why I like the philosophy of act, analyze, adjust that we talked about in the first segment, because that's going to happen. It's just part of running a business. But some of the things that I see when I work with small business owners, which I do on a regular basis and have for over 10 years now, it is putting the idea that they're so focused on how they're going to make money. And if I were them, and what I suggest to them is take a step back and decide how you're going to create meaning first, profits second, because profits are the result of something. They're not the cause of something. So if you create meaning first, so you have to have something of meaning, and that really comes down to have something of value that you can offer people. And so what I get them to do is step back and say, how is this meaningful? How is it meaningful to their lives, number one? Because it has to be meaningful to them if they're going to start this business and go in that direction. And then how is it meaningful to the lives of whoever they're trying to serve is number two. I think often that we get so focused on tactics and strategies and things of that nature, we lose sight of the real value of a business, which is to create meaning or purpose in someone's life. So I would suggest that business owners really take a step back and look there first more than anything else.
Right. Okay. And one of the things that I think is related to this that I've been aware of it at different times, but it really jumped more into my awareness is that all businesses are about solving problems, but it's the problem from the client or the customer perspective, not necessarily from your perspective.
Very true, very true. And often we get caught up, and that's why I suggested it obviously has to create meaning for your life, but it also has to create meaning for whoever you serve. And you really have to be able to put yourself in their shoes and say, how is this valuable? How is this meaningful to them?
Right. And so really engaging what's valuable and what's important to you, a service that you want to provide to people, but then meeting them where they are so that you can relate, be meaningful and relevant to them, and help them move in the direction they want to go.
That's absolutely right.
All right, great.
Another thing that I see often is, and this is a pretty big one, is that business owners rarely treat their business as an asset. Most often they look at their business as an income stream. And this isn't talked about very often. Again, we get caught up in tactics and strategies and things of that nature. We fail to realize that your business is really, for most people, probably their biggest asset if they have a business. And that's something that business owners rarely take into account. And so you really have to treat your business like you would any other asset that you might own, whether it's a savings account or a 401k or any other financial asset that you would have. You have to treat your business as such. And really that means creating value or having value creation go beyond just the product or service that you offer. The reason that if you look at big companies or recently big companies, the reason that Google is offering Groupon $6 billion for their company isn't because they're making $6 billion. It's because they're more valuable than the money they're actually making, and Google's willing to pay for that value. And business owners must take the position that I have an asset here and I need to develop my asset, because then you take a long-term approach. And again, you go back to why is this meaningful? Because if you take that long-term approach, you create a strong, stable, long-term asset that serves you and your family and your customers. And that's really what you're after, not just simply how much money I can make today or tomorrow.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah, that isn't talked about very often, just as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I go in and I work with small business owners, that's the very, very first thing that we sit down and talk about. How are you creating a strong, stable, long-term asset that serves you and your family and the customers that you serve? Because if you start there, you start to think and act very differently than if you're just focused on what are the strategies and tactics you're using to bring in money.
Right. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yeah, I love that. Okay. And then you have another big mistake or opportunity for improvement that you see?
Well, back to the strategies and tactics, those are very important because how you're marketing or what your value proposition is, how you're running your operations within your company are all very, very important. But I go back to the fact that you really need to have a universal starting place. And what that comes down to is, what is the purpose of your company? One of the very first things that I always do is make sure that I have a clear understanding of the purpose, the vision, and the values of the organization that I'm creating. Because from there, you make certain decisions. And so, going back to the financial program, for instance, our purpose is very simple: create happiness for people financially. And that can come in any form. So it doesn't matter if it's through an 8-week program. It doesn't matter if it's through a DVD. It doesn't matter if it's through in-person meetings. That leaves us flexible to figure out how we're going to deliver on that purpose. And then the second thing is to create the values that support that. How are we going to operate? Because when you sit down and you get clear on what your company values are and you operate from those values, you begin to make very different decisions than if you're just simply trying to implement a strategy or a tactic within your business. Because a certain strategy or tactic may not fit with the values of your organization. A certain company to partner with may not fit based on the values of your company. So if you sit down and you have a clear purpose, and you have a clear vision or objective of what you're going after, then you have a clear idea of what maybe your top 3 to 5 values are that you're going to operate from, then decision-making becomes a lot different. And again, when I've gone in to work with companies and we sit down and we go through this, it's amazing how they spot things. They'll start to spot things that they say, ooh, that's not in alignment. That's actually not in alignment with my business at all. We should change that right away. And it gets them to really think and act very differently than just what is the strategy or the tactic or the other method that I can apply to my business today to gain more business.
Okay, one of the things that jumps out to me just as you're explaining that is it seems so often people think that if they have too much structure, too many principles, they can really limit their flexibility. But I think there's that medium in between there where you do have a set of principles that are unwavering, that really channel the energy of your business, allow you to see what it really is in alignment, allow people who are your ideal clients to recognize you quickly instead of wondering what you're really about. And so it's really that sort of like an energy conductor or guiding of energy of your business.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be long or drawn out. I'm certainly not an advocate of somebody creating this long 2-page mission statement or anything of that sort. It's really about just getting clear in one simple sentence or a couple of bullet points that you can operate from. And I go back to the financial program because that one is so easy to explain to people. When we sat down and looked at it, I said, what's our purpose, what's our vision, what's our values? And our purpose, help people experience financial happiness, right? Very simple. It doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be clever, doesn't have to be overdrawn, just very simple. Help people experience financial happiness. And then we said, what's the vision? What's our objective? Well, that's simple. 1,000 financially happy people. Okay? Very simple target, 1,000 financially happy people. And then we decided on what the values that we would operate from. So every decision we make comes from these 3 values: happiness always and in all ways. Okay, so our focus is happiness first. We want to be happy. We want our customers to be happy. We want them to experience financial happiness or happiness in other areas of their life as well. And the second one is commitment to the people, not the program. Okay, and when you have a value system that says commitment to the people, not the program, you make vastly different decisions. For instance, if it was commitment to the program, not the people. Right. So sometimes we have to do things that might not make us as much money. Sometimes we have to do things when we're tired or when we don't really want to do them because we said we are committed to the people, not the program. And we're committed to their success so they can go through the program great. But if they didn't achieve the financial happiness they were looking for, then we've got to do something different to make sure they do. And then the third one is financial excellence, proving that we have financial excellence within our own organization if we're going to be teaching that to other people. So those are three very simple values that, they're not long, they're not drawn out, they're not clever. They're just very simple, clear-cut picture of how to operate. So when I hire people that do marketing for me, that do sales for me, guides that actually deliver the program for me, they know to operate from those values. So every decision they make stems from those three things.
Right, and that's just has to show up immediately to your clients as well, that they recognize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example. I love that, how, it's nice and simple. It gives us a very clear picture of exactly what you're talking about there. That's fantastic.
And the final one that I'll give you that I see often with people is not really understanding what their brand is. And branding is very interesting because, everyone has an opinion on how to create a brand, what a brand should be. And really what I do is just go back to one simple, very simple question. When you're creating a company, you're actually making a promise to the world of some sort. You are promising something. Mercedes-Benz, when they create Mercedes-Benz, they're making that promise of prestige, of high-end quality. So they have that kind of promise. Any other company has a certain promise that they're making. And so what I share with business owners is I say that whatever your brand is whatever you want to decide it is. What I tell them is make sure that you're consistently asking one question, which is, are we delivering on our promise? So before you act, before you create that new web page, before you create the new business card, before you go out and start talking to people, if you just ask yourself the simple question, am I delivering on my promise? You'll make different decisions, or you'll make better decisions to make sure you're in alignment with what your brand is. A lot of people will skimp, or they'll just go because they need to go, or just do something because they need to do something. But if they stopped and said, is this really delivering on our promise? They might make different decisions in the quality of work they're doing, in the quality of materials they're putting out, and things of that nature, because it gets them to stop and say, this is where we want to fit in. This is where we want people to view us. Are we delivering on that? No matter what part of their business it is, always asking that question is important.
Right, and that's very related to what you just talked about with the really the guiding principles.
Mm-hmm. And that's because when you have that universal starting point, when you have a purpose and you have values that you're operating from, then you stop and you pause and you say, are we delivering on our promise? And you're always making those decisions from that purpose and those values. Then you make very different decisions than just how are we going to make money today, or what's the latest, greatest marketing tactic that we can use or apply. Your decision making becomes much different.
Right. Okay. Wow. Fantastic. That's a great set of things that you see people doing that they can be improved upon, and specific examples on how to make those improvements. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right. And so in the next portion here, we're going to move into a project that you're starting here. Here we are in the last day of 2010. You're starting on January 5th, 2011. I know a little bit about the project, and I'm looking to hear a bit more because it's something that I've never heard of anybody doing, and it's going to be quite an eye-opening experience for a lot of people, I think.